Hello there everyone, welcome to a guide and overview of Cylostra Direfin of the Vampire Coast. Direfin, Direfin, I don't know. As always, I played through the initial turns and got a feel for the faction, its strengths and weaknesses. I'll show you my conclusions and in the end give you the army compositions that I will try out for some variety in playstyle. This is not an in-depth guide, but will certainly help you out. Without further ado, let's sail with Cylostra Direfin. So, for your short victory condition, you need to gain the first sea shanty verse and to occupy, loot, razor, sack 30 different settlements. This is a very short campaign in reality. All you need to do is keep earning infamy, which you always do anyways, and then you have the fight to earn the sea shanty here at 8,000, but then you should already be close to the 30 settlements, so yeah, that's fine. The reward is plus 15% casualty replenishment rate, which is excellent. To ensure your units are able to fight sooner after a battle, I always like to have a bit of replenish in my armies anyway, so yeah, it's good to have it out of the way, especially in uninhabitable climate, for instance, to resist those effects. Yeah. Now, the long victory requires to achieve the short victory, occupy, loot, razor, sack 75 different settlements, and at the start of your turn to have at least 25,000 infamy. That requires you to be number 1. So this may take a while still. It's pretty much a very sandbox idea of campaign. Overall, all the Vampire Coast Lords have this nice feel. It will give you, in reward, some Winds of Magic power reserve, so it's great to benefit from those spells. Yeah, overall, the long campaign victory streamlines into a good domination campaign victory, so it's really cool. Now, Cylostra, she's the mistress of the deep. She gains loyalty from new recruits, which kind of negates the impact of it. So it's like you don't have that lesser mechanic anymore. And then you have upkeep reduced overall for Cyrene and Morgan units, and less recruitment costs for them as well. Kind of incentives you into going into those compositions with those units in your armies, of course. In terms of climates, it's pretty good. Although as Cylostra, you kind of start much closer than others to uninhabitable terrain. So yeah, you're going to have those effects, particularly the casualty replenishment rate and the attrition that you may have over there. So that's a little bit of a problem, but still nothing that you cannot handle with the Vampire Coast, because you do have quite a lot of pleasant terrain around. Still, it's a little bit more difficult for Cylostra. That's the pain. Still a cool faction to play for map completion, really, as it's as with all the Vampire Coast factions. So your starting location is a 3-settlement province. It may seem on a nice tucked-in edge here of the map, basically, but truth be told, it's quite a perilous location. It's too close. It's very easy for enemies to come from this area as well, so giving you an additional issue to fight against. So yeah, it's a perilous location. Both Dark Elves and High Elves combined aim to have control of this, because it's one of the few places where you can land. So yeah, you may have issues against both very, very soon. Typical expansion is still to try and control overall this peninsula, okay, especially going against Taurox here, likely, going against Negarith and these Dark Elves here, and that may bring you way too close to Albion and to Be'lakor. So every time that you expand, of course, especially with the Vampire Coast, you'll always be met with further enemies. Very unlikely for you to get some allies nearby, but there's some options with other Dark Elves and with other High Elves. So just make sure that at least when you're fighting against someone, that there's someone that they are at war with as well. That's the sort of idea. And then it's very sandbox feel. So it's the typical expansion that I mentioned here. There's no issue in going straight up to Ulthuan. So it's up to you. It's up to your decision making. I'm just saying what feels more natural to control this peninsula. In terms of diplomacy, it's once more difficult, always hard with these sort of neutral factions. Not neutral in terms of how they are, but neutral in terms of how diplomacy works in the game, really. So you're bound to fight both Dark Elves and High Elves, so you're likely to bounce between Order Tide and Evil Tide. Therefore, factions that can also do the same, like the Ogres or the Skaven, are likely to be your main allies if you can find them. Exploring the map should be a priority if you intend to get some allies, like sending someone near Skaven Blight, getting some allies with Ikit, maybe with the Scrag if he's still alive. That sort of idea, it's much easier than trying to find anyone here that will actually assist you. Now, the main choice here is because anyone that you find here here. Of course, you can find some dark elves that will assist you, but likely you'll have to fight them anyways. Or you may find some warriors of chaos, but then you're gonna have to fight them anyways. So that sort of idea should be on your mind. If you find allies here, don't expect them to last until the late game. That's the choices that I want to give you here. Choices that may last well into the late game. So, should you achieve this, getting some cavalry units from the ogre, some of their missile troops are always good, some weapons teams are always nice from this cave, and it gives you a little bit more artillery choices. Should you have a decision of getting way too much artillery, it's up to you. That's the sort of theme for the campaign that I would like you to have. You know, that sort of idea with lots of range and just a little bit of mobility here and there from the outposts. That's the sort of idea that you should get. So the Vampire Coast has really small mechanics, small medium mechanics that are very interesting actually for me. So, Raise the Dead, pretty much as the vampire counts, although not as effective. It does allow quick armies to be summoned, especially the lower quality units. But you still have some zombie pirate gunnery mob with handguns here, which is always interesting. You also have the bloated corpses. It's always fun when those hit. So yeah, just recruit a couple of units and that's it. I know I'm in the red. I'm just showcasing here. Now, treasure maps. Treasure maps in Pieces of 8. Let's start with Pieces of 8. Very simple. These are your, to unlock the Regiments of Renown. That's what you need to do. You need to go around and defeat specific lords in battle. That's the sort of idea. Clear the seas and you get your unlocks of the Regiments of Renown. Pretty decent idea here. You can just send one army around and trying to collect those. And then you also have the treasure maps. So these are located everywhere. You know, they can be anywhere. You just send out, for the most part, you just send out a hero to hunt for these. It will always serve as a scout, you know, finding out new factions that you can trade or that you can declare war on, or that you can, you know, whatever. And then, of course, when you dig next to that location, then it will give you some treasure, some artifacts, etc. That sort of idea here. Now, you also have infamy. What is infamy? The more you gain infamy, basically, the more you climb up this ladder, become the most infamous pirates. The idea is that you have some specific levels like this with this to get the sea shanty verses. So what is the sea shanty verses? So the more you climb there, the more you have the opportunity to fight one army that will give you this army ability. As you can see, it's really cool. It only lasts 30 seconds, but it gives a tremendous amount of melee defense and reload skill. And this one even gives even more, and this one even gives even more. So it's like having a WOG, kind of like a WOG idea, WOG mechanic, you know, for the greenskins, but the opposite. Gives you melee defense and reload skill, which is always nice. Reload skill, it's really cool. Your units just fire so fast, it's crazy the amount of damage that you can put up. Now, port settlements, they also allow you to get pirate coves. So you can get pirate coves in enemy settlements, such as I've done here, and then you can build up some stuff. The buildings include infamy per turn, lord recruit rank, hero capacity, which is also nice, or you can have some infamy and more vampiric corruption, that's the idea, or you can have something more for trade, which is typically what people go for. So infamy per turn, and then you gain in local settlements income, 50%. So if you put this on port cities that are crazy with income, you know that will develop a lot of income, then you get the shinglers. You get a lot of money, that's what you want. You can also have a base income here, 200, you know, it's some income from trade to rifts, and some research rate, which is always interesting as well. So that's the sort of purpose of the pirate coves. There's builds where you don't conquer anything and you just go for pirate coves, which is always fun. So yeah, that's one of the specific things that you should have in mind. Now, some lords, including your Legendary Lord, have a horde-style construction. This is similar to Black Arcs. It allows you to quickly build infrastructure to recruit units, as well as receiving some important buffs. It's really easier and quicker to develop these over your basic settlements. You know, Cylostra also has a specific one here for more cash and replenishment rate, for more leadership, more control, that sort of idea. So, yeah, overall, people tend to build up this similar to the Black Arcs instead of building up the provinces, but it's really up to you. Now, rights. You have rights that allow you to have some specific well-deserved effects. So the first one, the Curse of the Sea Mist, allows you to cause attrition to any foreign armies in your territories. You're immune to that, and of course you have a Vanguard deployment for lots of units, which is always great. It's very defensible one. If you're under attack by several ones, always several enemies, consider this. Then you have the Curse of Eternal Service, just to resolve any loyalty issues. Your lords may have, all have loyalty. So if the loyalty is very simple. If it drops to 0, they revolt, and they take their army with you. So with them. So it's better that you never let it go back to 0 loyalty. So by all means, try to increase that loyalty. For the most part, fighting, just not leaving them idle is enough, and it gives you a good bonus to control. Then we have the Curse of the Queen's Cannon. You can recruit a Queen Bess. Only one is available. By the way, contrary to, for instance, to the Tomb Kings with the Casket of Souls, you only get one Queen Bess. It's good because she's a massive... She's like a hero unit, honestly. She does tremendous amount of damage if you know how to yield it. And then it gives you a lot of casualty replenishment rate. This is something that... it's very easy. It's capped at 50%, and the Vampire Coast definitely reached that 50% really fast, really easily. Especially with all the, with the short victory and with this, and research, they're crazy good for casualty replenishment rate. One of the best factions actually for it. Then we have Curse of the Bountiful Treasure. This is interesting. It only has a cooldown. It gives you 500 for every building owned from the buried treasure chain. Let me show you quickly those buildings. I believe I have one here. Well, I don't, but it has to be in the capital, by the way. This doesn't count. It's income. It doesn't count. It has to be this. The buried treasure. So it only counts on the capital provinces, so at least gaining those, it's important. And as you can see, the more capital provinces you get, the more you get from that bountiful treasure right. Now, finally, you do have offices. Offices allow you to have a variety of different bonuses that will help your overall campaign. For instance, this one to reduce right costs and recruitment costs, and to increase the income from ports. It's always nice. Or this to give you research rate, pirate crew growth, okay, and less construction costs in all provinces. It's always very faction-wide effects, except for those that are typically for the Lord's army. So for instance, this one gives weapon strength for deck droppers, terror guys, and scurvy dogs. So why not have an army that will focus on those units? That sort of idea. You can check this out later on, but of course just be mindful of those that are of those effects that are faction-wide and that are only for the Lord's army, to ensure that you gain the most out of this mechanic. And that is it. All small mechanics, but all quite highly impactful. I really like it. So, in terms of army stances, you do have the dig for treasure. It consumes all remaining movement and allows you to find the treasure map. If you're in that location, you can just choose a lord in dig. You can also use a hero. That's the most traditional way, because of course you don't want to lose movement with your armies all the time. So yeah. Then we have the encamp. Note that it doesn't have movement costs, which is excellent. It allows you should be done at every opportunity to replenish, really. It gives you immunity to attrition, enables replenishment. It's always good. It always allows you to improve your overall status, your overall position. Then we have raiding, which does cost movement range. Okay, so be wary of that. It still gives you immunity to attrition and just an income. And then we have ambush. 25% cost the same as others, and forced march the same as others. Now, in terms of province edicts, they're rather interesting. They're atypical effects. So you can get growth, less recruitment costs for zombie units, and more local recruitment capacity. That's always nice. You have a defensive one with lesser campaign movement range for enemies, and some vampire corruption, of course, always important. You have this even more defensive, gives you less attrition, more ammunition for armies, and just global recruitment capacity +1, faction-wide. Now this, you're bound to capture Ulthuan at one point, and there's some forts there, as well as the forts from the Empire. So by all means, try to get that global recruitment capacity improved on those places, because they're not generating income. So by all means, having this, it's really cool to get, crazy amounts of global recruitment. The Vampire Coast have the most ways of recruiting units ever in the game. Now, and then you also have Share the Spoils, so that loyalty will not decline for armies in province. You do lose some infamy, and you gain some control, so in higher difficulties this may be very relevant, so by all means ensure that you know these edicts so that you can adapt. Sometimes it's very easy to forget about specific mechanics and just continue and think that you don't have a choice. Always look to the specific mechanics, because sometimes there's a choice. In terms of buildings, there's no special buildings in your starting province. Military requires 6 buildings. The main issue is that all of them must be built on the capital. So this is one of the reasons why people typically try to develop the ship building, because in the provinces it's more difficult actually to build up. So yeah, of course people would like the most easier option. Now, you do have decent tier 3 units actually. Specifically, you do have decent handgunners and some hand cannons here, so for anti-large, armor piercing, deck droppers, just some flyers if you wish, some harassing flyers, of course. Then you have carronades and mortars. Both of them are invaluable throughout the campaign, so you can definitely see those. And of course you have some monstrous infantry. You can do a lot already with these units. Of course it's tier 4 and 5 that improves, but the main factor is that you can recruit so many. You can recruit so fast from so many locations that even if you lose some units, it's fine, they'll build up again and very fast. So yeah, that's the sort of idea with Vampire Coast. They can replenish like Skaven wish they could replenish as fast. So in essence, then you have it's also one interesting one. It's also one that you can only you only need to really build this building because it already has, you know, a defending unit. You can put this monstrous infantry in front of your army to defend, basically. And then you have an anti-large missile. You have the bombers to clear up any chaff really fast. And then you have the handgunners, very basic. So even with just this building, you kind of already have all the roles that you need, which is very effective. It's really cool. Now, infrastructure, it also gives you a hero, so yeah, why not? In terms of infrastructure, you have a growth, control, and enemy hero action success reduction. That's reduction to leadership as well, to enemies. Then you have income and control. It also gives control in adjacent provinces. You also have vampiric corruption. More often than not, all that you need is one of this to really spread out that corruption if you need. And then you have the bountiful treasure. So not only gives income, but of course you can use that right to even gain more from this bountiful treasure, which is always nice. Now, in terms of the research is really cool. It's very amazing, useful. I wish they don't change it. So for the most part, you have stuff that will benefit your armies overall, or your overall campaign effects, such as you can see here. And this, you know, for the missile strength, for less upkeep, you know, everything that influences your units. By the late game, they become really powerful. It allows a great deal of variety, which is always nice. And adding to this, you also get some ancillaries, so it can give you some different choices. For instance, I got the skulls and crossbones because I want to give Stalk and Strider to what's called to a bloated corpse to see if it works. No, just that sort of idea. You can have some interesting choices here that are really cool. And then you have this Admiral's Astrolabs, which give you legendary admirals, and the main part of these guys is that they also have shipbuilding. It no longer tells you here, but that's the idea from this. So you can have 5 shipbuilding, so 5 hordes really, which is really cool. Because, you know, for the most part, all that you need is actually those admirals to keep building and to have, you know, a good military. So yeah, that's always a nice solution for the Vampire Coast for many of the issues that they have. So as always, we have our Legendary Lord or specifics, then we have the yellow line or combat. In this case of Cylostra, she also has the lore of the deep, so basically some magic. Then we have the army or red line, of course. Then we have the blue line or campaign line. So blue line has an interesting aspect, but beyond having replenishment rate here, in the beginning. You also have, you know, some income from post-battle loot you may choose for, or you can have more leadership when fighting at sea, more income from sacking settlements. So there's some interesting choices here. But the interesting one is that the upkeep is minus 15%. And then you can get the black flag already to get minus 8%. So it's really cool because this wasn't, you know, this typically goes, it's 8% or 9% now, and this wasn't the change from Warhammer 2, which is really cool. Talk about getting more armies even. Now, it requires a lot of skill points overall, so everyone is kind of like a spellcaster, so you gotta be careful. You should plan wisely. Maybe you don't need all the spells, maybe you don't need specific ones to specific lords to be in melee, maybe you just want to use them as casters, so you must decide and plan wisely. Redline in Advantage can be extremely effective. It's a very good one to come up with different possibilities for your armies. I'll show you later on. Then we have, so, gunnery rights. Okay. I'm going to talk specifically about the gunnery whites because they're invaluable with the playstyle. They give you more ammunition with the powder keg, okay, and they give you more uses because this allows you to replenish ammunition. The good thing is that this combines really well. This combines really well with the extra powder. So if ammunition is above 80%, every unit does more damage. So that's when you use the ammunition to ensure that they not when they are depleted, to ensure that they keep doing that extra damage for as long as possible. And then it also has enchanted ballistics, which allows any nearby units to have more accuracy, more reload skill. Typically, what I do with the gunnery right, I plant him in the middle of the missile troops, either artillery or the missiles, because just this enchanted ballistics, it's so good, especially in the beginning when your artillery starts firing. Their accuracy is just so good to use, and yeah, that's typically that. And then, of course, you have your caster lords, which they are the ones to provide replenishment. Let me just show you here. But in essence, yeah, these guys are the ones to replenish troops. So of course, never a bad deal of having, you know, just one there. Maybe you bring just a caster of vampires. But they're still decent enough in combat, so that they're very invaluable. Good in combat. They have good lores good lores of magic, and then it also replenishes troops. What more can you wish for? So here are the red line skills for the Vampire Coast. Note how both low tier infantry and high tier are on the same, and how nearly every ranged unit, including a frontline defender, is actually on another. This allows some cheapest combinations, which is excellent because all lords have casting abilities, and you should have some choices for the skills. That's the idea here. Now, Cylostra buffs her entire army with magical attacks and physical resistance. That's really not enough to make too much of a composition. She does give some physical resistance as well to Sirens and Morgul Hunters, so you should consider that this is 15%. That may yet be enough to enforce you to use some Sirens and even Morguls as a front line. It's up to you, really. This is just theory crafting. That's always what I like to do. So some theory crafting with these guys for the front line, some bombers to clear up any chaff units that may show up, and of course some missile troops, which are definitely the bread and butter of the faction. Of course, nothing wrong with going with a more stable idea, which is some Necrofex Colossus there, some typical gun lines as well. By all means, adjust this. You can have just 2 Morguls or 3 and even more handgunners. These Prometheans do have guns as well, so yeah, everything here kind of fires, which is good. This is more of an idea to have, you know, some bloated corpses perhaps alongside the Morguls to defeat anything that, you know, comes around to defeat the Morguls, and then especially if the enemy doesn't have any missiles, they have a really hard time defeating the bloated corpses, and you can always recruit them very easily or raise them from the dead very easily. So that's the sort of ideas. Notice how they are quite effective as well, but nothing stopping you from going with a more traditional way. Such as, for instance, this is the more bread and butter type of army that I would field. I had, you know, dozens of this throughout these campaigns, and they always work really well. Or this one, it's kind of like the same idea but without the artillery, or having the Necrofex Colossus instead of the basic artillery units. It's really up to you how you decide. This is more of an interesting idea with the Sirens and then the flying units. So it's particularly effective if the enemy doesn't have a lot of flyers, so of course you can just death from above, that sort of idea. And then you have like 5 single entities, 6, 7 single entities. So it's a lot of single entities here. That's really helpful. And then some theory crafting once more, you know, just some monstrous units with some flyers. Always nice for specific enemies, of course. And this is a more everyone shoots idea. This is sometimes what people refer to, that you just get guns and that's it. It's always for fun. Okay, just note how they are quite effective in terms of red line skills. So that's the sort of idea that I want you to give to you. More variety, it's always helpful. So the Vampire Coast are quite unique in that they all start in a very different position. So Cylostra may yet actually have the most difficult start, since she's going to be facing some tough opponents for certain right in the early game. Tororks, you know, you have Malekith nearby, you have to deal with Nagaryth as soon as possible, so Alithanar, then you have tons of them here. And then you can be betrayed by someone here with the Sword of Cain, so be careful with that. You know, you always have to manage the Ulthuan, Bellicor, so you're kind of in the thick of things. It's very difficult. She can have some good early game though, with the summons that she can get. For the most part, you expect her to carry a bit with her spells while you steadily improve your position. Like the other pirate nations, you can just explore the seas and ensure that no one but you can sail the waters. That's always a nice fun campaign to do. Get some pirate coves everywhere, and yeah, that's always a good idea. Their army is crazy good after all the buffs you can get. It's one of the most efficient armies in the late game, so especially with all the abilities, sea shanties, all the replenishment, etc. Nearly second to none. Now beware though, I always recommend this. You rely on range, and those first shots you have that mechanic, the extra powder. So be careful with that, because that implies that when you're most effective, it's precisely in those initial shots. So if you're moving while you're already in range, stop and fire. I cannot stress that enough. Most of the issues happen because you didn't. Now your army consists of good infantry, great missiles and artillery, good monstrous infantry, decent flyers, good single entities. They do lack cavalry, and they're somewhat slow overall. Now replenishment is great, especially with good climate. Be wary of the chaos locations though. Still, I believe now it is time to take to the seas, to plunder, to raise and sack, following Cylostra Direfin.